And I think it separates, good parents from great ones, to be honest with you. There's a lot of good ways to parent, but I have found, here's a really obscure reference, that good parenting is often about proximity. And so I want to, when my kid plays, when they're at their happiest, at their most sort of core needs and desire as a child, I want to be there.
All right. And welcome to session 1, episode 1 of Between Sets. I have my first guest with me today. Her name is Abbie. Hi, Abbie. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. It's so good to have you.
Thank you.
Of course. I'm just going to break the ice by saying this is my first episode, so I'm super nervous. And if you're super nervous too, that's completely okay. We're going to work through this together, all right?
I'm ready. Right. This is going to be fun.
It's going to be fantastic. I'm super excited. All right. So let's just start with how we know each other. We met in a gym. I'm not going to say which gym, but we did meet in a gym. And can you just tell everybody a little bit about how that interaction went?
Sure. When we met, I was actually touring the gym with my husband and young son, who was, 2 months at the time. Mm-hmm. I was just starting to think about easing back into the gym, and I got introduced to John, who was the head of all the personal trainers. And he kind of talked us through what personal training looks like at the gym that I now go to. And after meeting him, I knew that I didn't actually know yet that he would be my trainer, but I knew that he would be somebody who'd be able to set me up for success with personal training.
Was personal training something you were looking for when you walked into the gym, or were you just there to sort of get an idea of what being in a gym would be like?
Definitely looking for personal training. I find the machines at the gym to be intimidating, and I don't know how to use them. And I'm also not anywhere near an expert on, how to develop the kind of muscles that I should be doing. And so I was 100% gonna kind of defer to an expert. So a big part of why I picked the gym that I did is because it had the personal training aspect.
Got it. Well, I'm glad we ended up together, and I think so far things are going pretty well. Let's just kind of go over goal-wise. What were you looking to accomplish, and why were you looking to accomplish that?
Sure. So I think I mentioned that I toured with my husband and my son, who just turned 4 months old.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's such a cute little guy, as I'm sure you can see him.
He is. I can vouch for
sitting. Yes, he is very cute. And I'm sitting actually in his space right now, hence the little rocking horse behind me.
Yeah.
But basically, I am a first-time mom, and I totally and completely fell in love with my little boy. And even when I was pregnant with him, it was going to be no secret that he was going to be a really active kid. I mean, He is like just all arms, all legs, just all motion all the time. It's unbelievable. And so my goals for joining the gym were kind of to be able to essentially keep up. I didn't want to be one of those parents who, didn't engage with their child and run around with them and throw them in the air and be able to hold them.
Right.
And so when I joined the gym, it was really specific to just being able to look after him the way that I thought he deserved to be looked after.
Got it. I think that over our time working together, you shared some things with me that I thought would be very inspiring to other mothers. I think your story was very inspiring to me, and I just wanted you to have an opportunity to share that with people.
That you think that, because this is such an awkward place for me to be, because this whole gym thing is still new for me, but I feel like I've overcome so much that I'm excited that you think that what I'm doing is good, and that you think that there's something positive that could be shared.
For sure. I think, well, to start, I think there are a lot of people who kind of share that sentiment that the gym can be quite an intimidating space, and if you are not very comfortable in there, then you're not going to do very much in there, right? You kind of will come and
That's
go and hide. Yep.
it's one of the most intimidating places I've ever been.
How come?
Um, that's a good question. Well, let's just be blatant about it.
Yeah.
In when I was growing up, so I am a very young millennial. When
Hmm.
I was growing up, we didn't quite have the body positivity that we do now,
Right.
and therefore, in my head, and probably reflected a little bit in the world as well, there was an idea of what somebody looked like who went to the gym, and that idea is still the idea is not true anymore, but that person
Mm.
still attends the gym. So
Mm.
I am like, I can visually look at the people who go to our gym, and I can honestly tell you, I don't look like most of them. They are really young and fit and lead sort of a Instagram, lifestyle, and that is just not me at all. But what I have learned and was confusing for the first couple times that I went is that the mentality about the gym has changed. That
Hmm.
we celebrate the fact that I go, not I'm not an outsider because of how I look. And so
Right.
that idea that I grew up with, as it turns out, while probably was a little true, back in the early 2000s, is just not that true anymore. At least that's what I have found at the gym that we go to.
I would 100% agree. I think one of the reasons for this podcast existing is because I think that gyms attempt to create this space of community. And I think that in doing so, it may not always know how to make that community form, but it does provide an opportunity for it to happen. And I think a lot of the things that kind of separate us in the gym are exactly the things that you were just talking about. So the way someone looks, what type of workouts they're doing, how strong they are, whatever the case may be, it's those are our separating factors. And I think we're all there for a specific reason. And if we got in tune with what those reasons are, we might find that we're not so different after all. And it may be a lot easier to form that level of community that I think we all kind of look for in a gym. So this is one of the reasons why I thought your story was so compelling, because I think that it'll be one of those reasons where people can connect to. And even though you might walk in and may not feel like you look like them, you guys may be going through things that are very similar. So I
Yes.
appreciate you sharing today.
Oh, just happy to be here, to be honest with you.
I'm happy to have you.
I, it's so exciting that I've reached a place where I could talk about, my limitations, and that I don't necessarily view them as limitations anymore. So I feel like just a whole new person, to be honest with you.
Good. What do you think was one of the reasons why talking about it was so difficult?
Just embarrassment. I
Mm.
mean, when you weigh a certain amount, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing when you have to buy clothes that are like in the plus size section. Our society, like I said when I was growing up especially, shunned this idea that
Mm.
there's something wrong with you because you have to go to like a different floor in Macy's, for example. So like at our
Right.
flagship store, right, there's like clothes on every floor, but I happen to know that plus size is on level 7.
Okay.
That is an embarrassing fact, and that is something that would have been hard for me to accept. Like, yeah, this is the size that I wear, and it also would therefore be embarrassing to say, well, to suggest that sort of I was out of control of my situation because I couldn't,
Mm.
I was this size, but I also like wasn't, the reason I was that size was because I wasn't backing up my life with any kind of real healthy habits like like physical exercise to the level that I'm doing it now. And
Okay.
so to say like, hey, I didn't do physical exercise like I'm doing now, and as a result, I now wear this really large size, and,
Mm.
and I have doctors, especially when I'm pregnant, essentially kind of shaming me a little bit for being that size,
Right.
right? That's very quite challenging to deal with. And so the idea that like, now I can tell you that I know that plus size is on level 7, and I can admit that, and we could talk about it
Mm.
openly, is like,
It's a big
That's a,
win
that's a big win for me.
for
Like,
sure.
and I no longer have any shame attached to it.
Good.
Like I
I'm
don't,
glad.
like I don't, like I'm not embarrassed anymore the way that I used to be.
Okay.
Like my body has physically changed since in the, 2.5 short months I've been working out.
Yeah.
I know I'm physically getting stronger. I'm also physically getting smaller,
Hmm.
but I still wear this a plus size.
Right.
But the fact that I could like say those words, like even to myself, and feel like proud of myself anyway,
Mm.
it's totally unreal.
I love that. So you mentioned that the doctors sort of were making you feel shameful. Can you go a little bit more in depth with that? Like, how does that happen? Is that something you think is normal? I've never been pregnant, so I have no idea
Sure.
what that looks like.
Yeah, without a doubt. So, a part of, I think, what makes me a little bit interesting, and I'm sure we'll get into this, is that my husband is British,
Mm.
and we also reside in Scotland. So, when I became pregnant with our first child, all of my prenatal care was in the UK. And therefore, I got to compare, because I gave birth to my baby boy in the United States, I could compare the kind of care that I received.
Okay.
Now, through the NHS, which is the care in the UK, there is significantly less stigma about how much a woman weighs when she has a baby. We
Mm.
actually stopped stepping on a scale in the UK in our second trimester. What I
Okay.
weighed was just no longer a part of the conversation. They encouraged healthy eating habits, and that was pretty much it. They measured the size of my baby. They took care of me. When I get back to the United States, however, things begin to change
Mm.
drastically.
How
I
so?
have to go into the doctors very frequently at the end of the pregnancy because you have to make sure baby's growing well, and all these things have to be double checked all the time.
Right.
And not only do you have to stand on a scale every time, but they also will kind of make comments about
Mm.
sort of how you could begin to prepare for birth based on what it is that you weigh. And even
Okay.
while in labor, this was also a factor. And I'll give you a couple of examples.
Please.
I was told at 37 weeks that due to my size, I was highly likely that I was going to have a C section because they thought that I automatically had gestational diabetes. Now,
Mm.
don't get me wrong, there's no shame in gestational diabetes. It happens to the healthiest of women, and there's no question that anybody should feel embarrassed about that. But to
Right.
assume that I have it based on my size is problematic. I
Hmm.
did not have gestational diabetes. My pregnancy was completely normal. And there was this heavy assumption that that was going to be the case. And therefore, they were suggesting that I was probably going to have a C section.
Okay.
While in labor, similar situation. In the UK, they use nitrous oxide, which we call gas and air, as a sort of a pain management tactic. And they've been doing it there for over 50 years. It's
Hmm.
a really straightforward practice. Here in the United States, it's relatively new. And the
Okay.
hospital I gave birth at actually had just re-implemented it after COVID because you have to breathe in the mask. And, after, with the COVID, all the women needed to wear masks. So they were just bringing it back when I gave birth. Now, in the UK, this gas and air is acceptable for all women giving birth. It is the standard.
Okay.
However, here in the United States, while I was giving birth, I had a team of anesthesiologists come in and suggest to me that I absolutely had to get the epidural because I was so high risk for the C section. But this was after I had already been promised that I could use the gas and air.
So they said
And
you had to get the epidural.
that's what they said. Now,
Okay.
Josh, my husband, pushed back really heavily on this because he knew what I wanted to do and he was always going to just be an advocate for me and what I wished. But what they told me was that I weighed too much to use the gas and air.
Okay.
However, in the UK, where they have been doing this for decades and decades,
Mm.
that is not the case. And
Mm.
I felt really attacked in this situation because I knew it was safe for me to use this. I knew it was safe for me. I knew it was safe for my baby. And the doctors are telling me that that is not the case. Now, hysterically enough, I was very upset at this
Right.
suggestion. I'm obviously in labor. They're making me feel guilty about, how much weight I've gained during my pregnancy, which hysterically was mostly water weight anyway.
Right.
And and basically my nurse took a huge amount of pity on me because she didn't understand what the doctors were saying. She didn't agree. And she actually went to go get another nurse who happened to do her training in Ireland. So she was Irish. She did her training with the NHS and then moved to the United States to practice at the hospital that I was at. And she came in and she said, listen to me. I worked in Ireland and in England for 40 years before I came to the United States. I have worked with gas and air with every patient who's ever had a baby. Your weight has no bearing on using this, this sort of pain relief.
Okay.
And so this was, and I already knew this, but to have her come in and just be like, this is fine, like you can do this and it's okay, was like total relief because I'm being railroaded by doctors who are telling me something different. Now, of course, hysterically, at the end, we pushed so hard. They let me use the gas and air, and guess what? It was really effective for me. It
Right.
was a really useful tool for me to use, but that entire time, like, I don't want them to think for 1 second that it left my mind that, like, every time they came in to see if I still wanted the epidural or not, that, like, I weighed too much to be using this and like I was some sort of ignorant and naive, first time mother who sort of overruled their decision, so that I could use the kind of pain relief that I was looking for.
So, do you feel like it was just fate that there happened to be a nurse like not that far away that you know I believe got her license in a space or in a place rather uh, that allowed the gas and air, and that was almost like the first like line of treatment. What are the odds of that happening, and how do you think that played a role in the doctors letting you eventually use that?
I don't think that she played a role in the doctors allowing it. I think that they were not gonna. I mean, Josh could be. He's British and therefore could be very blunt, I think is the right word to describe. He can put quite a fine point on things in a way that is
Okay.
not quite American culture. So I do think it was Josh who truly was like, I will not allow you to railroad my wife in any scenario. But as far as her involvement, it felt incredible. Like when I mean, like I said, I had most of my pregnancy in the UK, and I have come after living there for, or, having our house there and my husband, I have come to think of it as home in a very
Okay.
big way. And I honestly, I remember she left and I said to Josh, I said, it's just like we're right back at home. Like
Hmm.
she is actively looking out for her patient as an individual,
Right.
and it was total relief. I remember I was so like happy to feel like there was somebody else who was in my corner, and better yet, like somebody who didn't have to be in my corner, like my mother or my mother-in-law or my husband. Like this impartial person came in and came out swinging for what it is that I had wanted, and it was like a breath of fresh air. It was so great.
I love that. I love that. And shout out to Josh for, you know, doing what he could to make sure you got what you needed. I think having husbands that are, or having partners, I should say, that are supportive in that way and don't back down and are willing to fight the fight with you, I think is super important. So good job on his part. Better job on your part, making sure that you said what you wanted and you stuck to it, and you didn't let them tell you otherwise. Do you think that that could potentially, in some situations, prove to be dangerous if a person that would be considered the patient is telling the doctors that they want something very specific that the doctors are actively telling you you should not have?
Ooh, that's a very complex question, that is.
Hmm.
I This is an interesting one. I think that a patient's voice is one of the most important parts of the equation.
Hmm.
And I think that that voice has been essentially eliminated from the diagnostic culture of medicine here.
Okay.
But I also think that you have to respect it. Like your doctor has to be able to talk you through their thought process and
Mm,
why it is they think what they think. And you have to be ready to sort of listen to what they have to say and give them a chance to really logic it out for you. Because
right.
you should be able to understand when a doctor says, I cannot do what you're asking, and here's why.
Hmm.
That's an important thing, but I think that patients need to be more involved in their own treatment. And I'll even extend that statement a little bit further, which is that when you have a child, parents need to be more involved in their children's medical decisions and not
Hmm.
automatically defer to the doctors of your child.
That I don't know how many people are confident enough to do that, right? Like, I think we are just programmed to believe anything that doctors say, and we're not trying to say that doctors aren't educated or do not have the correct information. But when you feel something in your spirit and in your gut that's telling you to go left when everyone's telling you to go right, I think that not everyone has the strength, if you will, to combat something that a doctor is telling them. So
I completely agree.
what would you suggest to mothers or even fathers out there whose doctors are almost like intimidating them in a way, right? Because and it may not be conscious intimidation, but it can be just based off of degrees and information and years spent on the job. Do you have any advice on how they can find that level of strength to combat something that they don't agree with?
I think that the first step is to understand that if a doctor wants to have a course of treatment for you or your child, excuse me, if they want to have a course for you or your child, that the doctor should always be able to explain it in a way that makes sense to you.
Mm,
If it doesn't make sense, ask questions. Help them to explain it to you better. And if even if you're asking questions and you still don't understand, don't go with it.
okay.
Because the doctor's job is essentially to come in and say, hey, here's what I think the problem is, here's what I think a solution is. And
Mm,
they should be able to explain that entire course to you. Even and it's their job to come up with it, but they are not like you are not so stupid that you can't follow their logic through the
right.
process. You just couldn't have come up with the answer yourself. That's where
Right.
their training comes from.
Mm,
And so you should be able to understand exactly what the problems are, the solutions are, and you should be able to walk yourself logically through it. And if you disagree with the logic, to ask the questions that challenge the areas that you think, and if you still think that they are not sort of giving it an approach that you think is reasonable, that it is always okay to seek another opinion.
there you go.
You can always ask somebody else. And I might note that this is an incredibly challenging thing to do.
So,
I grew up in a house where my father was a doctor and he questioned everything. He came to all my doctor's appointments and always questioned what they thought the problem was, why they thought the solution was the right solution, and how they stepped through it. And so what I learned is that even doctors can question other doctors,
right.
and that that is a valid and appropriate thing to be doing, and that as parents and representatives for ourselves, that we
Mm,
have the obligation to do the same thing.
I love that. I love it and agree. And I think that's solid advice for any parent out there that may be struggling with that or, felt that same instinct but just didn't know what the next step should be. So I think that's great. So as we start to transition a little bit, right? So new mom and it seems as though you are going through all of the new mom things. What is it like? Tell us about what being a new mom is, the good, the bad, where are we at?
I think it's actually great. I think that I'm one of those people that was probably just meant to be a mom. And it's
Mm,
funny to me that I'm saying this because I know that at some point, obviously, my son will look back and probably watch this interview and realize how little he was when I said this and how he
right.
turned into a toddler who was a total nightmare. But
I'm
for
sure.
right now, it's a lot of fun. He has sort of woken up to the world those first couple weeks there. I actually called him my little potato because they eat and they sleep and that's pretty much it. But
Okay.
now he can see things and
Mm,
hear things and he wants to look and to play and to engage. And I just find it to be the most fun because I'm constantly reminding myself that like this is his first time doing
right.
everything
Right.
and I get to like live through that joy. So that's the good, right? I mean, and it's great. The bad is that I'm tired.
Yeah.
Um, like my baby's a great sleeper, but even a great sleeper has to wake up at this age at least once or twice overnight for a feed.
Right.
I haven't gotten 8 hours straight of sleep since I was like 7 months pregnant because at the end of
Mm,
pregnancy, you're really uncomfortable as well.
yep.
And so, but the good news is that you actually learn to survive with that. Like I got to say, like last night, I got 5.5 hours of solid sleep.
Okay.
Spectacular. That's amazing. So for somebody who's like, I sleep 8 hours every night like a rock, and I can't imagine sleeping less. Even if you're thinking about becoming a parent, you adjust to this new normal and you find joy in that like 5.5 hours.
Okay.
And then there's the ugly.
Mm,
The ugly is not something that is like part of our everyday. It's something that exists in my head,
okay.
which is like the fear of all the things that could happen that I don't want to. I have
Mm,
found I'm a big worrying person in general. Another thing I inherit from my father. That I am constantly worried about things that could happen, and I spend a lot of time thinking about them. When you
okay.
have a child, you realize that at some point, they're going to be completely autonomous from you, and there are things that you just can't protect them from. And
Right.
when you love something as much as you love your child, that's terrifying. And so the ugly lives in the that I worry that he could get sick, that he
Mm,
could be one of those kids who, gets really sick. I worry that maybe he'll be one of those teenagers who, make some really poor choices, or that he's one of those kids who ends up being a bully, or one of those kids who, just makes choices that would be very disappointing for me.
yeah.
And that will never go away. I just have to learn how to kind of curb it. Like I have to remember that I'm not a bad parent. I am not setting him up to be a bad person. And so I use that to sort of tamp it down. But that's sort of as bad as it gets for me. It's all the things I can think of that could happen.
Okay. You said that you have not gotten 8 hours of sleep since seventh month being
Hmm.
pregnant. All right. And I can attest that you are very consistent when it comes to showing up for your workouts and putting in maximum effort. Whatever you have left for that day, you give it, which I think is amazing. What motivates you to do that?
It's two things. I think that those goals about being a good mom, they got me to the gym and they keep me there on the really hard days.
Mm,
But I must admit, in a moment of total flattery for you, is that I really enjoy our time together.
oh,
That the fact, like, we are on a podcast right now. I am the
yeah.
first guest to be on that podcast, and it's
Yeah.
truly an honor to be here. And I think a true testament to the friendship that we have built over my time at the gym. Now, when you're a new parent, you hang out with other moms and they're your friends, and that is a great thing to do. But
Right.
sometimes you need a kid free environment. Sometimes you need to just talk to
Mm,
another adult. So, what keeps me coming super reliably, to be honest with you, is I like to hang out with you. that
Oh,
that
I love
I
that.
you are one of my very good friends. We talk about everything. We have
Yes, we
no
do.
like it's actually funny when other like trainers come up to us in the gym and they hear the conversations that we have. These are not run of the mill gym conversations.
Right.
We talk about it all. And so it's really that, so the community aspect. So like you were the beginning of that community, but it's starting to radiate past that point where I know
Hmm.
other trainers and people who work at the gym and people who go to the gym
Yep.
sometimes at the same times as me. And I look forward to having that adult interaction because it's so overwhelmingly positive. So on days when like physically I just don't feel very good, like
Mm.
mentally, it's always nice to go to some place where like you have adult friends.
I think that's one of the things I didn't even consider, right? As one of your reasons. And you're right. Sometimes you just need to have time with people who aren't crying all day and need your every second of attention. And I think as beautiful as that is, I think getting a chance away from it is a really good opportunity to recharge and regenerate that energy to go back and do it
And
again.
it does. I mean, every time I leave the gym, I am happy. I mean, you hear that thing. What is it that Elwood said during that? You have a Legally Blonde reference for anybody out there who's in my generation. Oh, she does exercise and endorphins make you happy, and happy people don't shoot their husbands. That's like a
Right.
line from the movie. This is like a true fact. Like I feel
Mm,
joy when I leave the gym. Like I am there and it is painful to do a lot of the things that we do. You know
right.
that. I complain
Yep.
all the time.
All the
And
time.
yet, all the time, I'm constantly complaining. I look over at him and I'm like, this is heavy. Like,
Yeah.
why are you doing this to me kind of thing? And yeah, I leave the gym and I am always all smiles. And so like, I know that if I just go, that when I leave, no matter what it is that I was battling with before I went, that I'm
Mm,
going to get an emotional break from that when I am done. And
I
like
love it.
you can't get anything better than that.
I love it. So how do you think that helps you, so having that mental relief and getting the physical exercise in that, eventually turns into seeing it physically, not just feeling it. How do you think that helps you when it comes to being a mother?
Oh my gosh. I couldn't even begin to measure it, right? So physically, mentally, let's start with the mental.
Okay.
Um, I think that wow, there's just so many ways I could take this question, because it's I need to be at my best to be a good mom.
Mm,
So it's as black and white as when I go, I leave happier, and therefore I am more relaxed, and therefore I am more patient, and therefore I am a better mother.
right.
But then it's also I go to the gym and work out, and even though he's so little, he observes me like getting ready in my workout clothes, and my trainers get put on, and I go and I come back. So then it's also just like he will always know that going to the gym is part of a healthy lifestyle,
Mm,
right? Exercise is part of that. So then you also model it to your child. But then it also extends past that point. When you are exercising, um, food becomes less intimidating. I don't need
right.
to feel bad when I eat now because I earned that food that I am eating,
Right.
right? So like it also just benefits my mental like health when it comes to how I eat. And then, of course, you can get to like the physical side of it, which is I can throw my son in the air and I can carry him around the house and I can push his pram up the steep hills. And I don't get tired while doing this. I move furniture around my apartment. Like I just moved my couch in my living room the other day. And
Right.
it was really, really easy. It was really light. And like, so like physically, this also like, so I'm able to create a home for him that I want to, and I want to make it warm and inviting, and I could do that physically. And the way I interact with him is just better.
Mm.
So everything is affected. And I'm sure there are a lot more, like ways that we could talk about it, but those are just a couple of the bigger ones, I think.
Do you feel as though if you didn't start working out, right? And I'm not trying to make this all about exercise.
No?
Uh, do you think that the way you would interact with your son would be different? And if you do, then how so?
Yes, it would be different. I mean, for starters, we'd spend a lot more time sitting around.
Mm,
I don't sit around with him. We are playing or doing, tidying up around the house and just regular, housework, or we are out doing things. I have more energy because of this. My interaction is really, really different. And this is like such a yeah, I can't even imagine what it would be like if I didn't. Like, I can like just do everything with him, and I don't think that my body cannot keep up. It always
mm.
keeps up. You
And
know,
that's a lot of work to keep up with
it's
to
a
have someone
lot.
that young.
It's
Yeah,
a lot of work to keep up, and to be honest with you, it's just going to keep getting more challenging. Because
right.
he's going to start to crawl and then he's going to walk. And 2 seconds after he starts walking, you know that that sprint is coming.
Yep, it's
I
coming.
mean, those little legs are unbelievable. It's shocking. It's just shocking. And so I'm like really proud of myself that I am
Mm.
already keeping up because if I hadn't started at the gym, I don't think I would even be able to keep up right now. And therefore, it's just going to keep getting better for me.
Okay. What do you think is like one of the most challenging parts about being so consistent outside of not getting as much sleep as you like? What else is like, what would be like number two if that was number one? That would be challenging for you.
Challenging for showing up?
Yeah, consistently.
That's a. These are some hard questions, John. You're really gonna make me think here, aren't you?
Hey, you're episode one.
I am episode one, aren't
That's
I?
right.
Like, you could throw in some easy ones like, I don't know, what's your favorite food? I'm just kidding. Um, let's see. What are the biggest challenges to showing up? Probably, I mean, sleep aside, but the idea of leaving him is very hard for me.
Mm,
Some
mm,
days it's easier than others. I know that you know about these days because I always tell you, like, I
yep.
don't want to be here today because I didn't want to leave him.
Okay.
That's and there's tough days like when he's like slept really well and is all sunshiny and happy and he's like all he wants to play and the babysitter comes over and like you have to hand him off
Yep.
and you hear him laughing and then you walk out the front door. It hurts.
I
It
can
hurts when
understand.
I leave. It's painful for me to leave. And I of course cope with that by telling you that information.
Absolutely.
Like I cope by saying, I don't want to be here today. I didn't want to leave him. But I also use that. So it's not even it's like it's a challenge, but then it's kind of like an obstacle that I overcome.
Right.
Because it's
Right.
like, so you're not there. Now that you're not there, what are you gonna do with it?
Yep. Make it worth it.
Right? I'm gonna make it worth it. Like I'm gonna work a little bit harder today because I don't want to be here and I need to prove something to myself. That
Hmm.
if I'm going to be away from my little boy, it's going to be for an excellent reason. And it's going to
That's
be because
right.
I gave it my all. It's not going to be for something that was casual and I could have canceled and it wasn't
Yep.
that big of a deal. It's going to be because this is a very important, life changing decision that I made. And I use that to fuel the workouts.
I love that. I think there's like that is such a normal like reaction, right? When you have to leave your newborn baby with somebody else, it could be super anxiety driving. It can just give you all these feelings that you maybe didn't realize you had before you had to walk out that door. So I think one of the things that's really helpful is the fact that you tell me, right? So me understanding that I can start to maneuver the workouts in a way that if I know you're not all there emotionally, which can, affect how mentally you're there. We make it something that's a little bit easier for your body to do on autopilot, right? And then when those days that you are there and you can give it your all, that usually means that mentally you're also as available. And then we just put you in a position where you could work a little bit harder. But every time you show up, you are investing back into your health. And I'm not just talking financially, I'm talking just the work accumulating that you're putting in. And I think not finding a reason, even though you'd have a really good one, to not show up is a major, major win. And I wanted to give you your flowers for doing that.
Thank you.
Of
And I might
course.
also note for any listener that this is why the trainer program works so well for me personally,
Mm,
is because I need to tell you I haven't slept, I haven't eaten, I miss my little boy, something's happened that's bothering me, I'm not quite here today, or I'm really here today and I'm feeling super strong and powerful and I want you to push me. And you get to tell me, like if I just tell you where I'm coming from, you'll
right.
meet me and tell me what it is that I should be doing that day. And therefore I don't have to like examine how I feel and how that translates to how I work out. So
Right.
like my
Right.
hard part is leaving and then communicating to you, but then my part is over. Now
Yes,
it's your job to figure it out and my job just to do what it is that you are telling me to do.
for sure.
Yeah.
And, this isn't a advertisement for personal training, but I do think it sort of goes along with what we were talking about earlier, seeking help in any situation that you're in, whether it's physical or mental, nutrition, emotional, like seeking guidance from somebody who has an expertise in
Yeah.
that area can prove to be very beneficial. So it doesn't just have to specifically be personal training or exercise
No.
science, but I think just having someone else there that can help guide you takes a major load off.
Yes, if you could find the person to guide you and you are prepared yourself to be honest with them, because that's hard too, to be honest with yourself and then honest with that person. You got to give them a chance to help, but they
Right.
can't help if they don't know what it is that like where you're coming from, essentially. Like that's an important part of it. Which
For
one
sure.
might argue is what this podcast is partially about, where one comes from, and our motivation to sort of participate in the gym atmosphere and the exercising atmosphere, but where you're coming from is one of the most important parts.
Absolutely. It absolutely is. What do you think is one of the reasons, or at least, from my perspective, it didn't seem like it took you long to be comfortable being that honest with me. Why do you think that is?
That's a question I cannot answer,
Mm,
and I'll tell you why. It does have a lot to do with you personally. We click.
yep.
There's I we clicked in the beginning. So there is something specific about you. And it's actually funny because I've been told the same thing about me. I
Mm,
often get people who will confide in me things that they probably aren't discussing with that many people. You are also guilty of this sometimes, if you'll
right.
recall. And
Uh,
so
yeah,
this
it's
man's
true. It's
hysterical.
true.
Like, give me a break. Come on. You've
It's
confided
true.
things in me, and then you're like, wait, I told you that. And I'm like,
Right.
I don't know. That you did. This is what I know.
Hmm.
And so, but there's something about you, and I think that it's just that our personalities just mesh really well together
Yeah.
because that's not normal for me.
Mm,
Um, that I have a very firm and small circle of people. And as I say this, of course, I know that my best friend Erica is watching and she's gonna laugh to herself because it took her years to break into my like little circle of like close people who get to know what I really think about things and be my
right.
truly honest self. And so I know she's like laughing because she's like, yeah, this is a freaking understatement, Abbie.
Hmm.
But you just managed to make your way into the circle at a rather quick pace. But I also met you on a playing field where I was not entirely comfortable, and I knew that if I was going to get comfortable, it was going to be because, like, you were going to help me get there. So I was going to
Right.
latch onto somebody, and then you were the first one it sort of clicked with. So if I latch onto you and you walk around the gym like you belong there, and
Right.
I use that, if you belong there and I'm your friend,
You
I
belong there
belong
too.
there too,
That's right.
right? So then I use that. So it was like I had to find somebody, and you were just sort of the perfect person in the right time in the right place.
Do you feel like other people are also supportive of this lifestyle that you're creating and, this constant, like, drive to be as good of a mom as you can be? Do you feel like you have other people that support you in doing that?
Those are two very separate questions.
Mm.
Yes, I have people who support me to be a good mom. And yes, they all support my serious increase in physical activity as part of that. The way that I have decided to do physical activity is a personal choice,
Hmm.
and not everybody can understand why it is that I picked the route that I did, right?
Okay.
I can easily go do exercise and not pay for the gym.
Right.
That's a choice that people can make. I didn't make that choice because that wasn't what was right for me. But I
Hmm.
think that that some people would argue that I could have done all of this and done it essentially for free. I would
Hmm.
disagree. I
Okay.
disagree that I needed the path that I picked is the right path for me personally. And to be honest, the longer I stick with it, the happier I seem, the more on board they are. But that initial choice
Right.
was definitely something that was called into question by more than one person in my life, which was challenging.
Okay. And what made you sort of block out the noise and do it anyway?
My husband, he, it's really, this is all due to him. I told
Mm.
him that I wasn't feeling that great about myself after I had the baby, and that I really wanted to get a handle on this, and he knows me very, very well. Obviously, we're married with our own kids, so I mean that's pretty close, right?
Right.
And he said, I think this is what you need, and I trusted his judgment completely.
Mm.
He brought us to the gym. I didn't find this gym on my own. He set up the tour. He went with me. The first day I even went to the gym, he came too, just to be like my little support. He was just
Right.
support. I
Right.
was so nervous and stuff. So it was like I had one voice of somebody who I trusted who said, it's okay for you to do it this way. And because I
Mm.
know you so well, I think that this is the way for you to reach some of the goals that you're talking about. And I completely deferred to his judgment. And therefore everybody else can just kind of fade off into the background a little bit because of just him.
Right. I listen again, Josh just keeps coming through. It just keeps coming through. So in even in the space that you're in now where you're saying that, some of those people are able to kind of see the benefits of those decisions and how it's been improving your life. Do you feel as though that understanding is just out of support for you doing something that makes you happy, or do you feel like they truly understand? Or does it
I
not
think
matter?
I don't think it matters,
Hmm.
but I do think they truly understand. I am a deeply logical person, which
Mm.
probably will come across in this interview.
Mm.
I am very well reasoned when I make choices. Anybody who knows me knows that I give a lot of things a great deal of thought. And therefore I am able to talk about the choices that I made and back them up with some real world evidence. And like,
Right.
this is a choice I made, and one, two, three, four, five reasons why that choice was good now, and here's five more reasons about why that choice will be good in 5 years' time. So
Mm.
now that I've sort of started this journey, I can step through why this was the journey for me with other people, and all of a sudden they realize that like their method of doing things is valid, but my method is equally valid because it's built for me.
Right. Okay. I like that. And I guess if there was three major and major, I'm putting a lot of emphasis on it, but it really doesn't have that much emphasis. Um, Pieces of advice that you would give a new mom who may be in your similar situation where, they're not feeling super good about themselves and the way they look maybe after having their child, and they're looking to take a step in the right direction of doing something about that. What are like three pieces of advice you would give? In no
Three
particular order.
pieces of advice. Let's see. I'm gonna start. Actually, this is like the one that just like pops forward in my head, which is a
Okay.
little bit funny because we haven't touched on this one yet. Is buy workout clothes you're comfortable in.
Why is that the first one? I like that.
Why?
Yeah.
Because I personally found it to be really helpful.
Yep.
I go to the gym and you need to be wearing clothes that help you blend in because I wanted to blend in. Like, I didn't want to stick out as somebody, especially in the beginning when I was so nervous about being there and so insecure in my own skin.
Right.
And I found a company that made workout clothes for somebody who was my size. I didn't like go and use clothes that I did before my pregnancy and like feel discouraged about how I looked in them or remembered how I used to look different. I found new clothes that fit me and I felt comfortable in.
Right.
That was a huge step for me. Like, I found this one company that just made, the leggings and the workout shirts in my size and they look pretty good. That was step one.
Okay.
Second is, if you're in my position, recognize that too much emphasis has been put on diet. You can't change your life based on how and what you eat, in my opinion.
Okay.
All food can be enjoyed in moderation.
That's right.
There is no good food and there is no bad food. Now, of course, you want to talk about nutrients, but I mean, like, in your brain, don't say, "Ooh, I'm a bad person because I ate this candy bar, but I'm a good person because I ate this salad."
Exactly.
This is dangerous, and how I used to think about my physical fitness. Don't do the food. Start with the activity. If you start with the activity, everything else will fall into line all on its own, and you don't need to worry about it. All of a sudden, you're working out, and therefore you're hungry, and you want to eat something that's going to make you feel full. That is not like empty sugar. So you're going to go home and be like, I need like chicken and I need rice and I need vegetables. Like, you are going to decide that based on the fact that you are super hungry from the gym. So the diet works itself out. Don't start there. I would land there second. Third piece of advice is I would come up with some pretty clearly defined goals. Now, I talked about my goals sort of in a very general sense, but I'll tell you one of my like super specific, allows me to do that one extra squat kind of goal. And my goal is to be the hot lava monster on the playground.
Right.
When my
and
son,
I know exactly what you mean too.
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Right? There are two kinds of parents at the playgrounds in the park. Those who sit on the bench, not that there's any shame, some days I'll sit on the bench, but there's also the ones that are on the tarmac, right, running around the play structure, trying to tap their ankles because they're the hot lava monster.
Right.
This is a super black and white goal for me. It's not like I want to be able to run or I want to be able to chase him or throw him. It's that this is the one goal that I want to have. And that goal will be met in like 5, 6, 7, 8 years from now that I'll be able to maintain that. And then I will find other super specific goals. And those goals have nothing to do with how I look, with even how I feel. It's I want to be able to do this one activity.
Right.
And that's why I keep going.
Wow. That's powerful. I love the last one, especially because it is one of the hardest things, I think, for people who would be in that position to pick something that's not aesthetically driven or pick something that's not weight driven. It is literally just like there will come a time where my child will either be playing around me or playing with me. And I want to be able to participate in that very special time in their lives where they still want to go to the park and they still
Yeah.
want me to be around and they still kind of want to hang out and do the fun stuff. And I love that. And I think that's really, really powerful. So I appreciate
Yeah.
you sharing that.
And I think it separates, good parents from great ones, to be honest with you. There's a lot of good ways to parent, but I have found, ooh, here's a really obscure reference, that good parenting is often about proximity. And so I want to, when my kid plays, when they're at their happiest, at their most sort of core needs and desire as a child, I want to be there. Physically, like proximity, I want to be there. And so that's what it's all about. And I think that elevates a parent sort of to the next level.
I love
So,
it. So do you have like an example outside of Lava Monster that of one of those times where you want to be there?
you know, the problem with this one is that causes me to have to speculate about who my child might be,
Mm,
which I don't do. I don't speculate about this because I want him I want him to find his own personality, and his own interests, and
right,
I will just sort of be along for the ride. Now, I am confident that all children love to play on the playground.
right.
This is a universal thing.
Yep.
Kids play on playgrounds. But after that, I can't say with any specificity what it is that he's going to be into. But that's the point. No matter what it is that he's into, I will be able to physically be there for it.
Right. Mm,
So I think to myself, maybe he wants to do swimming or running or wants to be an artist, but that may be things like he wants to paint our ceilings are quite tall here. He wants to paint a mural on his bedroom wall, and therefore I hold him on my shoulders while he paints the very top.
right.
That could be the physical requirement to be there for what it is that he wants to be doing. Right?
Right.
The others, it could be physical and it's much more black and white, but it's just things like that. It could be like we want to go see something and he can't see, and I want him to be able to ride on my shoulders.
Yes.
Right? He falls, scrapes his knee, and I give him a piggyback ride. So
Mm,
whatever it is that comes up, I'm not going to think to myself, wow, I'm tired. I can't do this anymore. Or like I'm physically limited to even begin to do it.
right.
I don't want that to ever come up for me. No matter what it is that he decides to do or be, that I will be there for whatever it is.
I can't think of a better way to end our podcast today. That was amazing. I thank you so much for showing up today and sharing your story. And I hope that we get to speak again.
Yeah, it'd be a real privilege. I hope that somebody listening to this can take this and recognize that, the things that you say to yourself in your head are hurtful and mean, and nobody who loves you would say those things, and you should cut yourself a little bit of a break and figure out a way to be the person that you want to be.
So true. So true. Thank you again for your time. It is so greatly appreciated. And we'll talk again soon.
Okay, thanks, John.
All right.